Good afternoon, live from Toronto on the GBKM network. This is the Chat Up Show, the show where we chat about any and everything to do with popular culture. I'm your host, Elizabeth Aloidi, and I hope that you are ready to chat it up with me today. Now, as always, you can keep up with the GBKM network in various ways. You can listen live 24/7 at www.gbkm.fm. You can watch live on Facebook and YouTube at GBKM TV, where you can also like, share, comment, and subscribe. You can follow us on Twitter at GBKM_FM and Instagram at GBKMFM. Now, I'm excited. We're back for another week of the Trusty Chat Up Show. Now, it's pretty clear that summer is pretty much over. We are falling right into fall. See what I did there? With the quick change of weather, knowing that we went from really sunny days to kind of gloomy, cloudy days, it's officially goodbye summer and hello autumn. Which also means that since it is the beginning of fall, it's also back to school. Now, of course, we've talked about how it will be like for some students going back to school, some who have already returned this week. Some experts are even saying that they're not sure just how long this school year will last based on the safety precautions that have been put in place. I mean, we know that a lot of schools are ensuring that kids are practicing safe distancing, wearing their masks, all of that good stuff, but we're not really sure just how that will look in practice. We're not sure if those measures will really play out in the long run. Some experts have even spoken to Toronto Star about their views on just how the school year might look in reality when we're dealing with a lot of kids in small quarters, if you will, of the classroom. Now, in other pop culture news, after 14 years and 20 seasons of the show, Keeping Up with the Kardashians will be saying goodbye in 2021. Now, some of you are probably like, who cares about the Kardashians? Well, some people do. I mean, the Kardashians have really become a household name. I mean, everyone and their mother knows the Kardashians. And to have such a long stint on reality TV for 14 years and to still remain somewhat relevant is really a big feat. A lot of people have fallen in love with their flamboyantly luxurious lifestyle. A lot of people have fallen in love with the family themselves. So seeing them say goodbye was a shock and some sad news for some fans. Some are speculating the reason, as the family hasn't fully disclosed the reason behind the show's cancellation. Some say it's because the sisters aren't on the same terms when it comes to the show anymore. Others may be speculating that it's because of Kim Kardashian West's husband, Kanye West's mental health condition as of late. But we're not really sure. None of the family has confirmed or denied any of these speculations, so we're not sure why they've decided that this is the time to say goodbye. But it was kind of in the works for a while, and I mean, honestly, you kind of saw it coming. Things always run their course and it's time to say goodbye when it's time to say goodbye. So if you do want to catch up, of course, you know that there's the various ways to watch their show on Hey TV for one. But as of 2021, it will be no more Keeping Up with the Kardashians. But who knows, maybe this won't be the last time we will see the family on TV. Considering Kim is still pursuing her lawyer career, maybe there's something in the works there. But as of now, Keeping Up the Kardashians is going to be saying goodbye. Now, with that little pop culture tidbit out of the way, there's something that's kind of taken over the social media sphere, if you will, a conversation that started regarding race. And that is to do with this new story that has recently been broken and has kind of gone viral. And that is the story of Jessica Krug. Now, some of you may be wondering, who is Jessica Krug? Well, I will be diving a little bit more into who she is exactly, but just to give you a little bit of an insight, Jessica Krug is an associate professor of African and Latin American studies at the George Washington University currently. But the reason she has gone viral is not because of I guess it's because of the work she's doing, but also because of the identity she has claimed. Krug, for the better half of this decade, has been claiming to be a Black woman with Latin American descent, similar to the story of Rachel Dolezal, who we remember was the white woman who had claimed Black ancestry, though her parents came out and essentially exposed her a few years ago for just being a white woman. Jessica Krug has essentially followed suit, and she herself actually came out and told the truth in a recent blog post that was published on Median platform. Now, Krug, who is actually a white Jewish woman from Kansas, claimed to be Black Caribbean, Black American, Afro-Latino. All of these different identities that she's claimed over the years has come to light that it has actually been a lie. Now, for some of you, you're probably wondering, how do you lie about your identity when people see you in person? That's an interesting question. And so far, we're not really sure exactly as to why or what she felt the reason behind lying about her identity was. But in her blog post, she does dive into some of the reasons why she decided she was going to lie for a few years about who she is and what she was doing. So let's find out a little bit more about who Krug is and why she felt the need to let the world know now that she had been lying all these years about her true identity. Now, as I mentioned, Jessica Krug was is an associate professor of history at the George Washington University, where she teaches or taught, depending on who you ask, politics, ideas, and cultural practices in Africa and the African diaspora, with a particular interest in West Central Africa and Maroon societies in the early modern period and Black transnational cultural studies, according to her bio on the university's website. Now, of course, not to raise suspicion, Krug was not the name she always went by, especially when she was doing her activist work. She adopted the pseudonym last surname of La Bombalera, just for authenticity of her claimed heritage. I guess she wanted to go with this new surname so people won't raise eyebrows about what her actual ancestry is and what her heritage is. Now, Krug is also an author. She is the author of Fugitive Modernities, Kishama and the Politics of Freedom, which basically studies the Kishama people of Angola and within the diaspora, especially in Brazil, which are places she claimed her, family came from. Now, the book was also a finalist for the Frederick Douglass Prize and the Harriet Tubman Prize, which are both historically awarded to African American academics. So, it's interesting that a white woman, clearly as you can see from the image, had decided that she was gonna take on this identity of a Black Latin American woman, and in all of her work, that is how she continued. That's how she taught, that's how she identified herself as, that's how she spoke about herself and her history, and spoke about her interest and love, or passion rather, for African and Latin American culture. She actually also received financial support from the Schoenberg Center for Research in Black Culture to help fund for the project of this book, which again would usually go to Black American academics or writers and authors. So I just want you guys to all keep these little tidbits of information in mind as we continue diving into this, identity crisis of Jessica Krug. Now, according to The Guardian, in the acknowledgments of her book, Fugitive Modernities, she thanked, quote, "my ancestors, unknown, unnamed, who bled life into a future they had no reason to believe could or should exist. Those whose names I could not say for their own safety, whether in my barrio," which is the Spanish word for neighborhood, in Angola or in Brazil. So she's really taking on this identity as a Black Afro-Latina woman. And who has the right to question her about her identity? I mean, she's saying this is who she is. You can take it for face value, right? Because this is how she's presenting herself. Now, Krug's additional studies also focus on African American history and Latin America. And according to Krug, her main focus has been in advocacies on behalf of people of color, as well as in anti-gentrification activism. So a lot of the work she's doing is for the community, with the community in mind, at least in the back of her mind of some sort. So some part of me as a Black woman wants to, kind of give her props for speaking up about issues that normally may not be spoken about in academia. But then another half is like, why is she lying about her identity? There's literally no need for it. As someone who studied African studies in university, majority of my professors were Caucasian, and they were just as passionate about the history and teaching the culture as anyone else So why did she feel the need to lie about her identity to continue working in these spaces? Maybe it was a feeling of imposter syndrome. Maybe it was something else. And she does dive into some of this in her blog post, but I just want to give you a little bit more about her work history as well. She's also been published. Some of her essays have been published in Essence, as we know is a historically Black magazine. At the race exploring website, Race Baiter, she's had some works published on that website. And for all of these years, she's kept her secret until this month when she finally felt it was time to share her truth in this blog post that was posted on the Medium platform. So we're going to try and piece together a little bit of her story to try and kind of understand where she was coming from. I mean, honestly, it sounds a little ridiculous that someone in this day and age will still be lying about their identity when we have all of this technology to really just pull up anyone's past. We could find as much information at our fingertips now. So to think that she spent all of this time and a big chunk of her career lying about her identity, and it was only now that she came forward, seems a little hard to believe, but I guess that's what happened. So Krug actually grew up in the suburbs of Kansas City as a white Jewish woman, and later attended the University of Kansas, still as a white Jewish woman. And then in 2012, she received her PhD from the University of Wisconsin-Madison in similar studies as the one she's teaching right now. So how and why did she cook up this lie about herself? So how she did it, she just said and claimed that she was of Afro-Latina descent. She just said it. And then she also added the surname, the pseudonym La Bombelera, to, I guess, add to her cultural flair, if you will. But it's just interesting to think that this is something she was able to come up with and continue for all these years. I mean, we know for at least a decade, this was the identity she chose to go by. So a few questions, a few red flags raising, as in how? How are you able to keep this lie up for so long? I'm sure there were people throughout her career who had maybe raised an eyebrow, maybe wondered about the authenticity of her identity, maybe questioned her a little bit. But she still managed to, for the most part, stay under the radar, even though she was up for these great awards and prizes. She received funding and grants that would go historically to Black American scholars. So she was able to kind of pass under the radar for a few years. Now, according to her, this lie was due to mental health issues. And in her blog post, she wrote, quote, "To say that I clearly have been battling some unaddressed mental health demons for my entire life as both an adult and child is obvious. Mental health issues likely explain why I assumed a false identity initially as a youth and why I continued and developed it for so long. The mental health professionals from whom I have been so belatedly seeking help assure me that this is a common response to some of the severe trauma that marked my early childhood and teen years." Now, she wrote this in her blog post. She doesn't really dive into what kind of trauma she experienced in her childhood. And honestly, it's none of my business for her to find out what kind of trauma she went through. That is for her to say and share in her own time when she feels comfortable. Maybe we'll get another blog post in a few years. But to blame all of this just on some trauma she may have experienced in her childhood just seems a little too far-fetched. And she herself even admits that she can't fully place the blame on mental health issues, saying in her blog post that, "But mental health issues can never, will never, neither explain nor justify, neither condone nor excuse that, in spite of knowing and regularly critiquing any and every non-Black person who appropriates from Black people, my false identity was crafted entirely from the black fabric of Black lives. That I claimed belonging with living people and ancestors, to whom and for whom my being is always a threat at best and a death sentence at worst." Now, those are some pretty strong words. That's a pretty strong statement, saying that her existence is a threat at best and a death sentence at worst. Now, this is like another level of Karening than I've ever seen in my life. It's true. I mean, I guess you can't always justify what she did and claim it's because of her mental health coping mechanisms, if you will, for the trauma she dealt with in her childhood and her early years, let's just say. But it's like, for someone who called out other non-Black people for appropriating Black culture or just Blackness in general, and to be lying about your whole life, like, how do you do that? How does that work, really? How does it make sense in your head that you know that you yourself are appropriating this culture, claiming it as your own when you know that it's not? It seems there's no feasible reason. As I mentioned, there are a lot of African and even Latin American historians who are not of that heritage, who are just interested in the culture, have studied it, have taken the time to really go through and study the depths of the cultures and the history of the various nations and the diasporas, and how the slave trade had influenced these mixtures of cultures and whatnot. But then to take it a step further and to lie about your identity to make it seem more plausible for your passion, like, you don't need to be Black to be passionate about Black issues. You just need to be human. So I will agree with her in saying that claiming these lines was a threat to other actual Black and Latin American academics especially, but also just to those communities at large, because she's taking up space, claiming to be something that she's not. And it's almost like she's removing that opportunity from people who are part of this community and have been their whole lives. Like, they didn't just wake up and decide that all of a sudden today they're going to be Black. So how exactly has she posed a threat, and which identities has she used in her tenure as a fake Black woman? Let's dive into that, shall we? So, Krug began her blog post with these words: "For the better part of my adult life, every move I've made, every relationship I've formed has been rooted in the napalm toxic soil of lies." Whoa. That alone almost made me want to exit the page, because I was like, what is this woman talking about? This just sounds crazy. This sounds ludicrous. But the more you go into it and the more you read her words, she then continues to say, "To an escalating degree over my adult life, I have eschewed my lived experience as a white Jewish child in suburban Kansas City under various assumed identities within a Blackness that I had no right to claim. First, North African Blackness, then US-rooted Blackness, then Caribbean-rooted Bronx Blackness." So those are the three different types of Black, I guess you could say, that she assumed during her time lying about her identity, essentially. She then goes on and continues saying, "I have not only claimed these identities as my own when I had absolutely no right to do so," correct, "when doing so is the very epitome of violence, of thievery and appropriation, of the myriad ways in which non-Black people continue to use and abuse Black identities and culture. But I have formed intimate relationships with loving, compassionate people who have trusted and cared for me when I have deserved neither trust nor caring." These are her words. So, I mean, I guess straight from the horse's mouth, I can't argue with her in that it is rather thieving, if you will, the thievery of it all, that she would take these cultures and claim them as her own. It still just seems a little preposterous and a little hard to believe that someone would continue such a lie, such a fabrication for so long, clearly for personal gain. I mean, what other reason would you be lying about your identity? I mean, it's one thing to move town, change your name, and maybe dye your hair, but it's another to completely take on a whole new identity, a whole new race as your own, because you just, felt like it? Now, this isn't to add on to her or like dump on her or to drag her, if you will. This is just asking questions that I feel like we need answers to. Like, what was the reason, apart from you trying to have coping mechanisms to deal with whatever childhood trauma Miss Krug was going through? What was the reason that you decided that this was the identity you were going to cling to? Maybe it was to fit in. Maybe it was a sense of familiarity. She also goes on to say in her blog post, "People have fought together with me and have fought for me. And my continued appropriation of a Black Caribbean identity is not only in the starkest terms wrong, unethical, immoral, anti-Black, and colonial, but it means that every step I've taken has gaslighted those whom I love." As I mentioned, there must have been a point during her tenure as a fake Black woman that someone may have approached her and been like, are you really who you say you are? And she probably did tell them, how dare you ask me what my ancestry is? This is who I am and this is my identity. Which is probably why she was able to go on for so long, that she was, as she says, gaslighting those whom she loved. Because you'd have to gaslight a lot of people to be able to keep up a lie like that. You'd have to tell them that they were the delusional one, or that they were the one in the wrong for even asking you such a question. And I think it brings up the conversation of how we deal with race at large, especially in North America. It feels like we're constantly tiptoeing around it. It seems up until like yesterday that we were finally having these open conversations on major platforms about race and how it shapes how we see the world, how the world treats us, how the world sees us, depending on the color of your skin. And I'm sure, as a history professor, she understands historically, especially in the United States, just how much of the history is rooted in race. So to then know that, who she is, as well as a white Jewish woman as well, to continue such a lie, it just seems like, wow. Just wow. Because, I mean, there's lying about one identity, I mean, of course, is immoral, but to constantly change who you are and where you're from just seems, it seems, that's a new level. It's a whole new level. It's a whole new playing field that we're in right now, because it's not that she just said, this is where I'm from and kept to one story. She kept changing it. And since her blog post went viral last week, many of the people who have interacted and engaged with Krug have spoken out about who she represented herself to be in their presence. Writer Robert Jones Jr. alleged that Krug also assumed the name of Jess La Bomballera, as we mentioned before, to pose as an activist in Bronx. Just keep in mind, she was raised in the suburbs of Kansas City. So just remember that as I dive into this next bit. He tweeted in a since deleted tweet, "I am in a state of complete and utter shock and sadness. Jess La Bomballera, an activist whom I often deferred to and stepped aside and gave the mic to on this platform, just revealed that she is a white woman who is pretending to be black." I'm sure these are sentiments that a lot of people who have worked with her have felt, or who have also passed up the mic and given her a platform to share her activism have felt. Another person who spoke out was theoretical physicist Chanda Prescott Weinstein, who also tweeted that Jess Bomballera / Jess Krug had been awful to black women who'd interacted with her, stating that she questioned our love for and commitment to black people and blackness. The audacity as someone who isn't of the identity or part of the community would question others on what they're doing for their community, on whether they love their identity as much. Like, I'm just gonna say the audacity. The straight audacity. Now, journalist Ivy Annie also tweeted about her encounter with Krug, saying that I was introduced to her by a colleague who was being honored at the Frederick Douglass Book Prize ceremony this year. She went by Jess La Bomballera and said she was Puerto Rican. She asked me, again, another identity, Puerto Rican. She asked me what part of the Bronx I'm from. I said by Bronx River Houses. And she said, me too. Now remember, she's actually from the suburbs of Kansas City. She's not from the project in the Bronx. She didn't grow up in the projects in the Bronx. She grew up in the suburbs of Kansas City. Another lie. So two lies in one encounter. Said she was Puerto Rican and that she grew up in the Bronx. She really didn't. And she really held on to this Bronx identity for a large part of her, I guess, career, if you will, as a black woman. Ivy Annie also went on to say, all I know is a lot of head for her and stood next to her, and I feel bad for all the black and brown people she duped. Unfortunate. And it's true. There are a lot of people who got caught up in her lies. I'm sure that not everyone knew, of course, but I'm sure that there were people who had stood up for her and had said no and shut down any of the rumors that had come out before, claiming she wasn't who she said she was. I'm sure they had vouched for her and said that she was a great pillar of the academic world as a black woman, though she is not. Now, We know that it's not true that she grew up anywhere near the Bronx Project because, as I said many times, and I will continue to reiterate, she grew up in the suburbs of Kansas City. Now, Krug obviously has capitalized on the fact that many, especially urban Puerto Ricans, embrace their African ancestors to claim blackness, or Caribbean-rooted Bronx blackness, as she describes in her Medium post. Even though she is very visibly light-skinned. I mean, you can see it in this image of her holding up her book, that I guess she's a very light-skinned black woman, if you will, and has very loose curls. Not very close to Afro-textured hair, but curly, nevertheless. So with these ideas of identity and race especially within the diaspora, especially with the history of this transatlantic slave trade, there's a lot of people who may have some ancestors who are of Afro descent in some way. And that's why I guess for so long she was able to keep up this lie because, you know, the benefit of the doubt. You're going to assume she's not really lying about her whole identity. But she was. She was. Now, one of Krug's GWU students, that's the George Washington University student, said to a reporter at New York's magazine's The Cut that, quote, she would have been fine if she was just a white woman. I've taken several African studies courses at GW taught by white professors who are just as passionate and just as knowledgeable. The things that she taught me could have been done without this whole minstrel show of a persona. Exactly what I was saying, that there are a lot of professors who are teaching African history or African American history, African American studies who are white, but they just have a passion for sharing this history and their knowledge. There is no need for her to have lied about her identity. So maybe it's deeper than just wanting to get the job or wanting to have this platform. Clearly there's something deeper here. And as she said, maybe it was her coping mechanisms dealing with her childhood trauma, but something else is going on here. Now, another junior at George Washington studying international affairs, Anmal Goraya, says she took an introductory history class with Krug in spring 2019. At the time, she said that Krug was one of her favorite professors, saying that she seemed like an energetic woman of color, being unapologetic about who she was, coming to class in heels, huge hoop earrings, and even leopard print, just being loud and proud about who she was. Now, Goraya told CNN that Krug would often champion Black and Indigenous artists and lectured on topics such as indigenous populations in Chile and the role of rice in the African diaspora, which honestly, if you know about the African, like we all eat rice, like it's the only food group available. But Goraya then went on to tell CNN that from the moment she came into the classroom, I was in awe of her, and I'm just shocked that it was such a complete lie. According to Goraya, Krug had told the class that she was from the Bronx, an identity she was proud of, and so proud, in fact, that she got into an argument with a student who had said that rap was invented in Brooklyn. So I guess another one of the New York borough wars, if you will. But this just shows that she was just so proud of her Bronx identity as an Afro-Latino woman, sharing all of her knowledge and her history and everything she's gathered in her experience as an Afro-Latino woman. Goraya said that she would also use a lot of Spanish words in her speech, which I mentioned in her acknowledgement, saying barrio, which is the Spanish word for neighborhood, instead of just saying the English word neighborhood, as English is her first language. She would also say plantanos instead of plantains, which we know plantanos is the Spanish word for plantains. She would just throw in a lot of Spanish in her speech, just trying to really show that she is of the culture, I presume. But the exact place she was from was always changing, Goraya said. She once spoke about how plantains were important to her family in the Dominican Republic. So that's another identity. You know how we mentioned Puerto Rico before. Goraya also said that she had told another student she was from Puerto Rico. So that's Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Angola, and Brazil. That's four different nations she's said that she's from. Now, Goraya said that still she never would have guessed that Krug was lying, telling CNN, it was the last thing on my mind to think she was lying. I would think I had the details confused. Another example of the gaslighting. Krug would also say the N-word when it was in text that class was reading, Goraya told CNN, which rubbed a lot of people the wrong way for obvious reasons, because they felt that what space does a white woman have using that word, that terminology. But at that time, everyone thought she was a black woman, so I guess no one really raised an eyebrow about it. And also, it's an academic setting, so you know that it's just using it for academic reasons. Now, these anecdotes essentially paint the picture of the lie Krug had been telling for years, and through her work could be said to be making, though her work could be said to be making some sort of positive change. But as she even said herself in her blog post, intention never matters more than impact. And that's true. Though her intentions may not have been to actively hurt people, the impact of her actions have hurt many. Now we're going to take a quick break, and when we're back, we're going to dive into just how they may have hindered a lot of people, especially in the academic scholarly world. So stay tuned. We'll be back. Do you believe you could host an entertaining, engaging, and thoughtful weekly show? Or are you a business person or entrepreneur interested in building a brand for yourself? Can you connect with an audience and have strong social media skills? If so, the GBKM Network would love to invite you to join our team. We're looking for driven, genuine folks who are willing to work hard as an independent broadcaster. If this sounds like you, come join our team. For more information, email your resume to career@gbkm.fm. That is career, CAREER, at gbkm.fm. It's time to turn your passion into a career. Hello and welcome back to the Chat Up Show. I am your host, Elizabeth Aloidi, and today we're discussing the story of Jessica Krug, associate professor at George Washington University, who recently revealed that she has been lying about her identity as a black Latina woman. When in fact she's actually a white Jewish woman who had claimed she had grown up in the Bronx, New York, but really had grown up in the suburbs of Kansas City. And as we know, geographically, they are nowhere near each other. So we've been discussing a little bit more about her history and the work that she's done, and discussing how some people who had interacted with her felt about this lie that she outed herself on her blog post. Now, we were just talking about a student of hers who had actually looked up to her while she took her class last spring, talking about the different ways Krug had painted the picture of herself as a black Latina woman, using Spanish words in class, using the N-word liberally, even getting into debates with students about where rap originated, whether it's from the Bronx or Brooklyn, claiming that she was Dominican, also Puerto Rican, Brazilian, Angolan, of African descent, of Afro-Caribbean descent, all of the above. These are all the identities that she had claimed over the years or her career as a black woman. Now, before we went on the break, I mentioned the quote, something she wrote in her blog post, saying that intention never matters more than impact. And though her intentions to go living this life and continue living this lie, though, as she said herself, she had thought many times over the years that she would come out clean and tell the truth about who she was. Maybe she didn't have wrong intentions and she wasn't looking to hurt anybody. She wasn't looking to cause any issues or any kind of disruption, but her actions and the impact of her actions say otherwise. Because, I mean, obviously, she was up for notable prizes within the African American community, received grants, scholarships that would normally go to Black American scholars that went to her as a white woman. Now, that, if you're just looking at it from, I guess, the bird's eye view, looks like she's taking opportunity away from people that opportunities were initially created for. And how can you live with yourself knowing that this is a lie and knowing that this is something that you're taking away from someone else? And though you are passionately and actively in her activist work speaking out against non-Black and white people taking up or appropriating Black cultures, even the history, just everything, the identities, all of that. Knowing herself, she was one of the people she was speaking out against. Talking about anti-gentrification, she essentially tried to gentrify a whole identity. Now, she's not only taking these opportunities away from people who are actually black, but also for her students and peers who respected her and helped give her her platform that she had as a white woman. You know, this isn't to say, don't get me wrong, this isn't to say that if you are white, you are not able to participate in cultures that are different from yours. That's not what this is. I mean, we live in a world now where cultures are constantly mixing. New generations, we're constantly seeing people picking from wherever they are. If they grew up in a certain place, they will probably be raised with a certain type of culture. That's not what I'm saying here. I'm not saying that she has no right whatsoever to teach African or Latin American history or to speak at certain events or to be an activist. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is she has no right to lie about her whole identity. Because what does that do? What does it do? It says, A, you're a liar. B, you don't really understand clearly what you're saying, because why would you do exactly what you're preaching against? Practice what you preach, you know what I mean? Again, this isn't to drag her. This is just to discuss the whole scope of things. I mean, it's not just Jessica Krug who's done this. There's other people. Rachel Dolezal springs to mind. I mean, even Elizabeth Warren, who claimed that she was of Native American descent as well, back when she was running for president. It's not the first time we've seen something like this happen. I mean, it's not the first time we've seen quote unquote transracial people who believe that they were born in the wrong racial body and feel that they need to change that. It's not the first time we're seeing this, but it just seems a little more violent this time around because she is taking up space as an identity that's not her own and claiming that she is for one cause but living something completely different. Now, Krug definitely understands what she has done and seems from her blog post is taking full accountability for her actions. She even says that accountability is important. She's taking accountability for what she's done. She's also urging folks to cancel her, saying that I should absolutely be canceled. No, I don't write in the passive voice ever because I believe we must name power. So you should absolutely cancel me and I absolutely cancel myself. What this means, we don't know. She doesn't even know. She says it herself. She doesn't know what it means if she will be canceled. And honestly, we've discussed cancel culture before, whether it even does do anything in the grand scheme of things, if people who were canceled are really canceled for real. But it seems now that a lot of people are really urging for the cancellation of Jessica Krug and saying that she cannot work the way she was doing before. Which is a shame because, I mean, if she had just kept with her true identity and was an ally, I'm sure people would have respected her even more for it, especially as someone who knows and understands and is here to be an ally and for allyship and to stand with and to be an activist for issues that affects the Black community in America. But it's that little lie. I can't even call it little because it's a grand lie. It's a big one. It's a big one. It's a big lie. That one really discredits a lot of the work that she's doing and that she's done. Because it's important we know about these histories. It's important we hear the other side of things. It's important we dig deeper into certain topics. But if you're doing it under this guise, under this disguise of whatever identity you're choosing today, whether it's Dominican, Puerto Rican, Angolan, Brazilian, whichever one, it almost discredits that work. It almost discredits what you're saying as a person. Who's really going to take it seriously now when they know that you're lying? And it's a shame. It really is a shame. Now she continues saying that no white person, no non-Black person has the right to claim proximity to or belonging in a Black community by virtue of abuse, trauma, non-acceptance, and non-belonging in a white community, which I guess alludes to the fact that maybe she felt that she didn't belong in the white community, which honestly, historically, for a lot of Jewish kids growing up, they do feel that they were on the outside and left out of the white community a lot of the time. But that doesn't give you the right, as she says, to just conjure up a new identity and claim it as your own, especially when there's so much going on within those communities that threatens them and their livelihood. The audacity. But I mean, she herself knows what she did is wrong, and I guess that's why she felt that it was time to put out this blog post. But that leaves us wondering, what's next? What's next for Jessica Krug? She's asked us to cancel her, but will we really? Now, it's unclear why she's chosen this very moment to finally come forward. Many speculate that it's because she might have been close to being found out. It might have been exposed sooner or later, so she wanted to get ahead of the bad press, if you will. A source close to the story told The Cut that Krug only published her post because she knew a group of Black and Latinx academics were onto her deception. So people were onto her and were ready to expose her for, I guess, the liar she is. Now, Harry Ziad, who is editor-in-chief of RaceBaiter, confirmed this idea on Twitter last week, writing or tweeting, "Jess Krug is someone I called a friend up until this morning when she gave me a call admitting to everything written here," referencing the Medium blog post. She didn't do it out of benevolence. She did it because she had been found out. So it's not that out of the goodness of her heart or her conscience was eating away at her. Because honestly, she had so many years. She didn't even have to do it at all, but she had so many years to finally come clean. Even she said it herself that over the years she had considered coming clean, considered speaking up and telling the truth. But now, because you thought that you were going to be found out, you felt that it was necessary to tell the truth. Yeah, it's hard to, kind of feel sorry for her, but it's also easy to understand, like, somewhat where she's coming from. I mean, again, as I said, it doesn't take away from the work that she's done. It probably has had a lot of positive impact in the communities that she's working with and working for. Can't take away from that. She did the work. It was all her. I mean, she got the PhD. She's teaching these courses. She wrote the book. As far as we're concerned, we don't know about a ghostwriter just yet. Who knows? That might be another blog post. She's done the work. So you can't take away from that, but it's hard it's hard to remember that when you know that she'd been lying about her identity. It's hard to, be like, oh, okay, she lied. But I mean, the work she's doing is really good. It might be hard for a lot of people to get over that because it's major. This isn't a little white lie. Like, this is big. It's a big thing. Lie about your whole ancestry, your whole heritage. And for what reason, she still hasn't said fully. And she hasn't said in which ways she has posed a threat to these communities that she claimed to be a part of. She hasn't talked about that in full detail, but I'm sure she's going to have an all-exclusive interview at some point where she will be able to tell her side of the story and to say why she felt that this lie needed to continue for so long and in which ways she was taking away from the community she was trying so hard to help. Because that's what it looks like. It looks like she's taking away from the people she's claimed to be standing up for and championing and being an activist for. Now, as of last week, George Washington University has announced that Krug will no longer be teaching her classes this coming semester while the school investigates this. It's not a crime, is it? I mean, false identity, but still, is it a crime? I wonder what she was checking on her census. Was she putting white or black? African descent. Who knows? Or other. Maybe other. But the university says that they will be investigating this issue. A number of Krug colleagues in the history department, however, have expressed that they are shocked and appalled at her long con. And also some fellow faculty members posted a statement asking either for Krug's resignation or for the school to revoke her tenure so she can be fired. Now, for GWU to terminate her tenure, it has to be determined there was adequate cause. Now let's look at those. Terminable offenses include incompetence, a lack of scholarly integrity. I mean, yeah, I guess so. Persistent neglect of professional responsibilities under the faculty code. Yes. Gross personal misconduct that destroys academic usefulness. I mean, just looking at this list, it seems that these are grounds for her tenure to be removed. And I mean, integrity. I guess she showed integrity by coming out and telling the truth now, but she still lied. So there's that. So who knows? Maybe she might lose her tenure and she might be fired from her position at George Washington University. It just seems almost ridiculous to believe that someone who is clearly, I mean, you could see in the image, clearly white passing at least, could have held up this lie for so long. But again, she mentioned that she had been gaslighting the people she loved and had been close to her and had trusted and respect her within her career and within her field for so many years. So that's probably how she was able to keep up this lie. She would just put it back on them and say that they were out of step or in the wrong for calling her out for essentially lying about her identity. And honestly, it's an interesting example of how we deal with race, because it's hard to question somebody who is telling you who they are to your face. And who are you to then come back and say that, no, you're not, that's not true. You don't know them, you haven't lived their life, you don't know where their family really is from, you don't know their heritage unless you are the person that did the DNA testing for them. And who knows, maybe she does have some ancestors who are of Afro or Latin descent. Who knows? I don't know. We don't know yet. Who knows? But this just speaks to how race is dealt with in this world. As I mentioned before, we've often tiptoed around it. And it also brings up the idea of the one drop rule that has been used a lot of times, that if someone can claim that at least within their great great grandparent that they have some black in them, that, you know, they can pass whatever that means. So it's just a whole, there are so many factors that have allowed for something like this to continue for so long, and for it to not be the only time. It's because of how we deal with race. Maybe if we start just talking about it openly and honestly, at this point, it's what society has created and we've lived with it for so long. Why are we now trying to hide and shy away from being able to call each other black, white, Latin, Asian, whatever? It's been how society has identified people from different regions for so long, and why is it now that we want to be hush-hush about it? And it's probably why we've allowed for things like this to happen for so long, is because for some reason race is such a taboo subject that people don't want to talk about it out loud. But maybe that's now we're going to start seeing those changes. I mean, we've seen it now, especially this year alone, maybe because we've had the time to really think about it and really think about how race has played a part in how society has formed and how certain identities have been shaped. Maybe now we will start becoming more open and honest about it and understanding just the nuances of race, A, and B, just we need to be open and honest about these things. We can't hide away from it. I mean, I walk into a room, you see me as a black woman. I am a black woman, and I'm not shy to say it. I will proclaim it till the day I die. It is part of who I am, and it's not all that I am, but it is a part of who I am. And it shapes the way I see this world. It shapes the way the world sees me. It shapes the way I walk around and I interact with people and how others interact with me. I can't hide from that. It's the truth. And maybe if we start talking about it a little bit more, we won't have as many Jessica Krugs or even Rachel Dolezals walking around who are able to capitalize on the facts that so many people are so scared to talk about race. Now, I obviously understand why some people who may have questioned her ancestry wouldn't have wanted to, you know, outrightly questioned her, because again, it could have been seen as disrespectful, or it could have been seen as, you know, racist behavior, however you want to put it. But it's still slightly unbelievable. For at least 10 years, she was able to keep up this lie. Like, how? Even her accent gives it away. If you hear her speak, she doesn't sound like she comes from the Bronx. She doesn't sound like she grew up in the Bronx. She sounds like she's from the Midwest. She's from Kansas, for crying out loud. I don't know who she thought she was kidding. No disrespect to her, but I really don't know who she thought she was kidding with that. But still, again, it doesn't take away from the work that she's done. It doesn't take away from the fact that she may be an activist, and these issues may be something she's very passionate about. This history is something that she may be passionate about. It doesn't take away from that. What it does, however, is take away from her integrity. It takes away from us being able to trust her as an academic or even as an activist. It's going to be hard for her to regain that trust and respect from people that she had built it up for so long with, who had thought of her in this way for so long, who had respected her for the work she's doing because of the identity she had put out there. It's hard. I mean, she said that we should cancel her, so who knows what's going to come next? Who knows how she's going to be able to rise up from this situation? Who knows? But of course, she isn't the first person, as we know, and as I've mentioned quite a few times. Rachel Dolezal was another person who was exposed for not being the black woman she claimed she was. Her parents, who are both white, did an exclusive interview and said that, no, this is our daughter, Rachel Dolezal, who actually goes by another name, Nkechi Diallo, I believe it is. Yes, Nkechi Diallo was the name that she was going under when she was chapter president of her NAACP, and she was college professor. So she really took on this Afro identity, if you will, to really become her own, until her parents essentially came and bust a bubble and said that no, she is a Caucasian woman, has been since the day she was born, showed the pictures of her blonde hair, blue-eyed, juxtaposing the images of her now with her kinky curly hair and tan skin is what I will call it. It's tanned. And it just also brought up, that in itself brought up the topic of transracialism, if you will, which again, as I said, is the idea that people believe that they were born in the wrong racial body and they try to change it. Now, some people go to full extremes, like Martina Big, who now goes by and has been baptized as Malika Kubwa, who was or is a German model, who in 2015 actually became known because of her love for plastic surgery and her large implants. But also in that, she then continued getting more, I guess, becoming viral, if you will, or getting more opportunities to speak out or given a platform because of her love for blackness and black culture and African culture specifically. So much so that she began, in fact, getting melanin injections. Yeah, you can buy melanin. And it's kind of pricey. It's like $300 for 10 milligrams or something. So you can buy melanin and be injected with melanin because, according to her, the spray tan was not giving her the deep, dark hue she was looking for. She got a rhinoplasty to make her nose broader and to look more Afrocentric. Got lip injections for fuller lips, obviously. Changed her hair dyed it black, and also got perms regularly to change it from her straight blonde hair to kinky dark coils. So she went through this whole transformation, and then after that decided that she was going to move to Kenya to live amongst the Maasai community to better understand this part of African culture, because she's just so passionate about it. And now she sees herself as a black woman. And that's how she feels she is, and she feels more comfortable being a black woman. I don't know. I mean, I definitely have no right to sit there and tell her, no, you're not. You don't know what you feel. You can't feel that way. I mean, do you? But just understand that these actions may hurt people, and it may seem to others, even though maybe to Martina or Malika, is I guess what we're going to call her now, maybe to her it seems that she's just participating in a culture that she loves, but to others it looks as though she may be appropriating this culture. The same with Jessica Krug. Maybe it seemed that she had fallen in love so much with the African diasporic culture, or the Latin American diasporic culture, that she felt that she had to fully immerse herself in it and to, become this identity of Jessica La Bombalera, to fully understand and fully be within this culture of hers. I mean, honestly, I'm sure this is going to be studied by psychologists and psychiatrists and doctors all around for some time to come. It's rather fascinating how someone can essentially wake up one day and choose that this is something that they're going to be. Again, I have no right to tell her whether or not she can claim what she claims. Who am I to say that? But actions have consequences at the end of the day, and it seems that her actions are catching up to her, and the consequences are also catching up to her now, that she may be facing being fired from her position, which it's sad to say, and it's sad to realize, because again, this history needs to be taught by someone who is passionate about it, because the more passionate you are, the more you're able to, I guess, spread the passion. But it's sad that it just seems that she's taking away these opportunities from people who are really about that life, not faking it. And again, as I said, it's one thing to dye your hair and change your name and move to another town, but it's a whole other thing to claim a completely new identity as your own, with no regard of the people around you who are actually of that identity. Especially as an adult, she's grown. A grown woman decided to make these lies and continue them. This isn't something of a child, even though she says that it was something that she started in her youth. This is an adult woman who decided to lie about her identity. But as I said, actions have consequences, and it's clear that now that she's, outed herself, there seem to be consequences for her actions as the university investigates this dilemma, I guess is what we'll call it, if you will. Dilemma, yeah, that works. But I say all this to say, you don't literally have to be a Black person to care about issues that pertain to the Black community. You don't have to be of Latin American descent to care about things that affect Latin Americans. You don't have to take on these identities to just care. It's in human nature to care. We are empathetic. We're nurturing. We care. You can care without lying. And with that, I conclude today's show. As always, it has been such a pleasure chatting with you today. And as you know, you can keep up with the GBKM network in various ways. You can listen live 24/7 at www.gbkm.fm and soon www.gbkm.tv. Look out for that. You can also watch live as usual on Facebook and YouTube at GBKM TV, where you can also like, share, subscribe, join in the conversation, all of that good stuff. You can follow us on Twitter at GBKM_FM and Instagram at GBKMFM. You can follow me, your host Elizabeth Aloyde, on Instagram and Twitter at TIS_Liz_O. And with that, remembering who Jessica Krug is and remembering that you don't have to lie about your identity to care about certain issues, I will be chatting with you guys at the same time, same place next week. Chat with you then. Take care.
Do you know who you are? What is your name?
Sometimes you wonder why and wonder how. Don't be alone. Just stay calm, cause even if you choose or not to.
My child, recite the words of this ancient mythology. The wisdom I disperse in this verse, no apology. Memorize to keep you from evil theology. For you, the darker hue, you denied your equality. See, for generations we perpetrated psychology. Divide and conquer each other, really lynch policy. You cannot build each other up, how will you build economy?
Do you know who you are? What is your name?